Can a quiz funnel get you 7-cent leads into your business? And by the way, 7 cents, that's not a mistake. In fact, that's what happened to Jamie Wheal, founder of the Flow Genome Project and national best-selling author of the book Stealing Fire. Now, the Flow Genome Project is an international organization dedicated to the research and training of human performance. And in Jamie's new book, Recapture the Rapture, was coming out, and he wanted to find a way to drive more book sales. So he and his team built a quiz funnel, and get this, their cost per lead went from anywhere from 30 to 60 cents per lead to 7 to 15 cents per lead on average. Now, when I say that quiz funnels are a great way to get cheap leads, this is what I'm talking about. Now, you want to see how he did it? Well, right now you can get your hands on the entire quiz funnel blueprint right here, which is a 25-page downloadable PDF that gives you the entire quiz funnel map all in one place right here. It's the exact process that I followed to build quiz funnels in 23 different markets, to build multiple 7-figure businesses, and become a #1 national best-selling author and Inc. 500 CEO. All you need to do to get your hands on this is just click the link with this video to download the full blueprint right now for free. Now, once you've checked out the quiz funnel blueprint, you might still have some questions. Like, for example, what exactly does a quiz funnel look like? Is a quiz funnel right for you and your business? And how do you know what your quiz should be about? Well, I'm going to be diving into these questions and more in a once-a-year, super special, entirely free quiz funnel workshop that I'm hosting super soon. Now, if you want to find out more about how to implement a quiz funnel in your business, all you need to do is just click the link with this video to get instant access to this entire quiz funnel blueprint. And I'll also put you on the notification list for once we go live with the free quiz funnel workshop training. All right, I'm going to leave you with that for now. Go ahead and do this now, and I look forward to seeing you on the inside. Hey, what's going on? It's Ryan Levesque here, and I'm super excited for our special interview here today. I'm here with none other than the man himself, Mr. Jamie Wheal, and we're going to be talking about his quiz that he just launched like not too long ago, and there's some exciting initial results that we're going to be talking about. Give you a preview into the quiz. We're going to talk about his business and how this quiz fits into the overall ecosystem that he's built and what he does. And maybe if we're lucky, he'll even give us a sneak peek into the quiz itself and see some of the questions that he's asked and how he's doing it all. So with that being said, please join me in welcoming our special guest, Mr. Jamie Wheal. Jamie, what's going on, man?
Oh, good times, good times. It's spring and just got back from skiing in the Rockies, so fired up to get back to work.
That's a beautiful time to be alive, my friend. I agree. So before we get into the quiz, let's set the stage a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your business. Tell us a little bit about, who you serve, what do you sell. Tell us a little bit about your niche, your business, and kind of set the stage for us.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of the Flow Genome Project, which is an organization dedicated to the research and training of ultimate human performance. So everything from flow states to peak states, adventure, wilderness training, acrobatics, body cognition, all those sorts of things. And I also write books. So I wrote a book called Stealing Fire and have just come out with the sequel, Recapture the Rapture, and that's what we've built our quiz around.
I love it. Stealing Fire is a great book, by the way, for anyone who hasn't read it. I should have been prepared. It's in my bookshelf that's like just outside of arm's length reach right now. I should have it pulled up. Great book, huge fan of it, and I'm excited to check out book number 2. Tell us a little bit about your business. So you sell books. We get a little bit of a sense for how you help people in kind of the world that you're in. But what do you sell exactly? Are you selling coaching? Are you selling courses? Are you selling physical experiences? Tell us a little bit about your model.
So, I mean, fundamentally, and this is our DNA, we've always been mountain guides, instructors, and teachers, from building a Montessori school for our own children to working with YPO and Fortune 100 companies and training executives, and then doing it in the most dynamic learning environments possible. So wild backcountry, taking students up to Camp 3 on the north face of Mount Everest and having them, do meditation solos in medieval caves, to snow camping and living in igloos and doing black bear hibernation studies. So we love dynamic learning, right? And that's why the Ask method is such a beautiful fit, because we found ourselves accidentally, in the digital world, getting pulled into like infomarketer land. And almost all of it felt really kind of icky and sticky, and all the kind of pushing of lizard brain buttons of scarcity or vanity, all these things just didn't track for us. But your method and the way of going about saying, hey, it doesn't matter whether you buy from us. What matters is, are you smarter, wiser, more informed, having encountered us? Right. That felt like a perfect fit and kind of why we were so psyched to work with you guys.
You know, it's tapping into that power of self-discovery that you and I, we both talk about so much about, and that's this opportunity to, I think what you do in just sort of different ways, you help people discover something about themselves, unlock something inside of themselves that just creates all sorts of opportunities, and really a quiz is kind of like a tactical microcosm of that. It's like asks a few questions to really understand someone and add some value, whether or not they decide to move forward and ideally become a client or become a reader, buy your book, whatever it is that we want them to do. But at the kind of worst case, walk away having learned something about themselves and having gotten some value from the experience. So yeah, we are very simpatico in that way. So let's talk about before quiz. So we're going to get to the quiz in just a minute, but let's talk a little bit about before quiz. Before you launch this quiz, you know, how are you driving leads in your business? How is it working? Do you have any numbers or any results that you can speak to kind of provide a little bit of contrast between what life was like before and then kind of how things have changed after the quiz?
Yeah, well, you know, as I said, we're a learning organization, right? So for me, then we actually attempted to build our own quiz, and it's been our longest standing kind of lead magnet. It's the #1 way that people stumble across us, exchange an email for a profile, and kind of begin becoming a part of our community, receiving our newsletters and all that. And it's been going well. Like, it's literally the best thing we've ever done, but the numbers were between 30 to 60 cents a lead, and typically kind of averaging around 50.
Okay.
And then just following your template, and we're in our early stages, we haven't even got your kind of expert feedback and modifications. We are now sub 15 cents. We've cut that in half or more, and there's times where it's even 7 to 11 cents. So it's kind of basically oscillating between 7 to 15 cents a lead for people coming across. And this is a more obscure quiz, actually, because it's for this book, right? So this is, we were like, how do we do this, right? How do we tell a story and get, you know, the first one was just like, what's your flow profile? Like, pretty easy.
Right.
This one's what's your pleasure principle? And it's, you know, there's a lot more meat to it. So the fact that we're seeing that kind of improvement and we're only just getting started optimizing with you guys is super exciting and encouraging, because then you just get to reach more people and you get to share your story, share the mission with a whole bunch more folks.
So just to make sure I've got the numbers right, pre this quiz, your original quiz, the kind of one that you just, you know, did it yourself, tried to get it going, performing decent, 30 to 60 cents per lead. Afterward, following the process as kind of we prescribe and as we've, you know, optimized over the years with all the data that we have access to, able to cut from 30 to 60 cents to 7 to 15 cents per lead. Do I have those numbers right?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I can even try sharing a screen.
Yeah, let's take a look.
And showing that.
I know for some people, as you take a moment, you can pull it up, but I'll just say this as you're pulling that up. You know, for some people, you hear these numbers and it's like, it's almost unbelievable. It's like, you know, is this true? But this is one of the biggest benefits of a well-designed quiz that follows truly best practices, both on the tech side of things, but then also on the creative side of things, is you can get the cheapest cost per lead that you may have ever seen in your entire business history using this process, which is really, really exciting. So tell us what we're looking at here.
So yeah, I mean, I would just go straight to the far right-hand side of the column, and you can just look at cost per result. And you can see 57 at the top, 49, 31 for an average of 56 cents a lead across $3,500 spend. I mean, actually, we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this over the years, but those stats, I think, are pretty consistent. And then let's see if I can get to, the next one. This is our, you know, less than a month working with you guys. Let's see, where did our numbers go here?
The third column from the right, I think, cost per result. Yeah.
Right, so we didn't quite crop it the same. So cost per result is the third column from the right, and you look at 13, 12 with an average of 12, and we've actually seen it dip and oscillate right in that band. So yeah.
That is exciting, my friend. I always puts a smile on my face when I think about it. And by the way, you're not in a market that leads are inexpensive. I would imagine that your competitors are probably paying north of $1, maybe several dollars per lead using traditional, you know, lead and customer acquisition funnels. So your first funnel doing great relative to the competition in your niche or industry, but then this one is like probably 90% less than what all of your competitors are charging, which are paying for leads, which is incredible. So very, very, very cool. So the $1 million question is, all right, what do we do in this quiz that's like making it hum? Are you cool if we maybe take a look at the quiz and talk through it a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I sent you the link, so feel free to pull it up and you can take a whack at it yourself.
Let's do this. So let's pull up the screen here. So we've got the quiz right here. This is a version of the quiz. I'll zoom it out a little bit so we can get a little bit more of a view on it. So concept, as you discussed, what's your pleasure principle? Take the 7-question quiz to find out how you relate to all things pleasurable. Start the quiz. We've got some great social proof with all the places that you and your work's been featured in, which is always a great best practice. We've got a nice, I love the design on this, by the way. I think it's really, it really conveys a lot of value in the fact that this is really thought through. Ecstatic personality types, the hedonist, purist, and conformist, which is cool. And maybe talk a little bit about how that ties into the content of your book. Is this something that you talk about in your book, Jamie? How does it fit into kind of the content that you cover in the book itself?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, with the title of the book, Recapture the Rapture, the whole premise is how can we harness peak states to allow ourselves deep healing and connection to others. So the pleasure principle, that's just alliteration. Like that's the sort of most removed, but we wanted something short, pithy, catchy, and we were following your advice not to use any unique or specific jargon or terminology. So
right.
that was absolutely from your guys' recommendation. But the moment people come past that, we wanted to start educating them about what we really mean, so that this isn't just kind of a sugar high, something to do like Farmville, right?
Right.
And so that's where we start introducing the concept, from optimal psychology of the hedonic treadmill, the idea that most people have conflicted or ambiguous relationships to pleasurable activities, and we definitely have socially defined sort of lenses or filters. So we wanted to, again, following your advice, sort of immediately start informing, establishing credibility, and start priming folks to understand the point as to the why of where this quiz would take you.
Love it.
In a learning journey.
And just setting the stage for this quiz, the intent of the quiz is people take this quiz and then post-quiz, the thing that we're driving people to after the quiz, is it your book? Is it content? Talk to us a little bit about that before we go through some of the questions here.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, and this is one of those tricky things that's like, back in the day when everybody was taking pickup artist courses, and the question is like, how quickly do you rush to kind of make the close, right? Well, for us, we, the intention of our organization, again, is a learning organization. We're not a sales organization. And the intention of the book is empowering people to make really good decisions for themselves and their communities. So for us, it's that sense of, yes, we'd love to expose you to this content, but it needs to stay congruent. It can't be kind of a shiny object and then a pressure close. It needed to be a learning journey that folks want to keep going on. So absolutely, our kind of KPI is going to be translating to book sales and then potentially to opt-ins for additional toolkits or additional digital trainings that then also fund some of the research we're doing with Johns Hopkins. So kind of a pro-social way to kind of fund the growth of the ad spend and the campaign so it can keep going and doesn't require fresh capitalization, but it can also be kind of mission aligned with the story in the book.
Great. Awesome. Well, let's take a look at some of the questions, and as we go through it, we'll take a look at the questions, and then we'll take a look at the stats, so kind of the benchmarks that we like to aim for sort of at each point in the quiz funnel. I think that'll be really instructive, and then as I see opportunities, I'll just kind of go through them and talk through maybe some of the things that represent low-hanging fruit. So one of the things I like to do, just as a best practice, and this can sometimes give a nice little 5 to 10% boost on your landing page, is to make the thing that we're talking about, so in this case here, pleasure principle, pop a little bit more. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just to put it in quotes. So when you put the phrase in quotes like this, it does two things. Number one, it just visually stands out a little bit more. That's number one. And number two, it conveys that it's a thing. It's a coined phrase. It's something that you've thought about, and it sort of implies that there's a bit more weight to it than without in quotes. So it's an easy thing to do, simple test to run, but that may be a kind of a quick hitter that you might want to consider for the landing page itself. All right, let's take a look at this. Before landing on this quiz, had you heard of the concept of the hedonic treadmill before? Yes or no? It's a great question. The one thing that I'm always cautious around is yes, no questions in a quiz like this. And the reason for this is, from a positive psychology standpoint, we don't want to insert in people's minds this idea of saying no. We want them to be saying yes. We want them to move forward to our next step post-quiz. So if we're not getting our post-quiz kind of results that we want to be getting, sometimes it can be due to the fact that we've almost implanted this negative suggestion in people's minds where, when we put an offer in front of them, whether it's to buy a book or sign up for a webinar or take the next step, we've implanted this, hidden suggestion of say no when that comes up. So an easy fix is just say before landing on this quiz, had you heard about the concept? Yes, I've heard of it. I hadn't heard of it before. So it's not as strong of a no, and it gets the same result that we have now.
Nice.
Okay, great. Love what you're doing with the progress bar. It's a nice little thing there. So not starting it at 0. Again, think about all the steps someone's taken to get to this point. They've scrolled through Facebook. They've read your Facebook ad or watched your Facebook video. They've clicked on that Facebook ad. They've read your landing page. They've decided to click on the landing page. They've taken a number of steps to get to this point. So it's fair. It's in integrity, in my view, to walk people through how far in the process they've been. And we want to be as aggressive as we think is reasonable. So, we don't want to say you're 90% of the way there, but it's fair to say that you're more than 0% in terms of progress. So I like what you've done there. When it comes to altering your state of mind, what do you value most? Seek the full range of experience. I follow the advice of experts. I protect the sanctity of my mind and body. Good. No major issues there. I like what you've done. These are all nice and short, concise phrases. They're not too long, which is good. Which of these could be your catchphrase when it comes to altered states? If it feels good, do it. Only if it's what the doctor ordered. My body is my temple. Good. No issues with that. I think that's solid. What's your substantive choice? Anything with enough kick to get me lit. Ambien, Prozac, Ritalin, alcohol legally prescribed, or I don't mess with it. Wheatgrass elixirs, butter coffee. No issues with that. If someone tried to give you advice to party a little harder, heartier, or more lighter, or a little lighter, what might be your most likely reply? And the fact that I tripped over that, just reading it, obviously, cold, it's a cold read for me, may be something to think about. If someone tried to give you advice to party a little harder, and so you may have intended to say heartier. I have a feeling a segment of your audience will want to say harder, or a little lighter. What might be your most likely reply? And I think small thing, but just there may be a space right here before this. Yeah, it looks like there is. Just a not super consequential, but the
and that you're totally right. Like that was the goofiest one, and we just hadn't fixed it yet. So you're totally on point on that.
Got it. Okay, cool. Like what you've done in quotes. It's good. You're not the boss of me. But who would I be if I did that? I don't need those crutches. Good. All right, let's take a look at these. You tell your doctor you're having some trouble sleeping. What do? Take one each night. I wouldn't take prescription drugs. I'd go for natural herbs and lifestyle changes instead. So I'm just doing this in different views, and I'll often take a look at this both in mobile and tablet view as well when I'm kind of analyzing. That's something that's a good best practice. So this technology, this is obviously built in Bucket, optimizes it for mobile and tablet as well as desktop, but it's also good to test on your native device. So take your quiz yourself on your iPhone or your Android phone. Take it on your iPad or your Samsung tablet or whatever you happen to use. Do it just so you can see what the user is experiencing from their perspective. And the thing that stands out to me here, it's an easy fix, but I might try to get this second option down to one line. I wouldn't take prescription drugs. Maybe I'd instead of I would. That'll probably get us there. apostrophe D. I'd go for natural herbs and lifestyle changes instead. Try to get it to one line. It just it'll help add a little bit of symmetry to this. Once I get into something good, I'm going to keep going until I finish it off. Girl Scout cookies, Ben & Jerry's, etc. What's my most likely response to temptation? I'll stick to my recommended daily allowance and serving. Says I'm not the kind of person to overindulge and make choices consistent with my values. We might be able to, tighten this up a little bit. You could probably put ice cream, etc., or like ice cream exclamation point, etc., or something like that. Cookies, ice cream, etc., to get it into one line. And again, sometimes it's you got to spend a little bit of time polishing the language just to get it there, but it's simplicity on the far side of complexity. I'll click here. If I had to pick, my ideal relational format is polyamorous, only with the person I'm legally married to, with soulmates. Cool. All right. And here we go. Where should we send your pleasure principle breakdown? Enter your info in the contact form below to get your custom breakdown, your result, and what to do with that information today. Like it. Again, you could carry through that the quotes. The one thing that I would say, Jamie, to think about is there's a little bit of incongruency between the words we're using here, pleasure principle breakdown, and what we have here on the image on the right-hand side, right? Ecstatic personality types. We have breakdown of the 3 pleasure principles, but it's very small font, and I don't know that most people would see that. So something to consider, right? So is there a pre-head that we could put in here? Pleasure principle breakdown. Your ecstatic personality type, and then so we see that phrase. There isn't that inconsistency in people's minds between, wait a second, I signed up for the pleasure principle, but this graphic is a little bit different. So
well, which way could you do it? Because we actually want people to get closer to ecstatic personality types. So could we say, where should we send your ecstatic personality type?
Well, no, because we got to carry it all the way back, right? So we got to take it back to the ad. So ideally, the ad is consistent with the landing page, and the landing, we haven't looked at the ads, but the ad here is, what's your pleasure principle? So we want to carry that theme through all the way through the entire funnel. Typically, things will break down if we make a hard pivot along the way and don't seamlessly move people from the initial idea to the next idea. If there's just a hard pivot without a transition, that's when people start to break down in the funnel and they say, wait a second, this is not what I signed up for, I'm going to bail. So a way to do the handoff might be to put pleasure principle breakdown at the top. So it's, your pleasure principle breakdown. I can imagine it sort of as a pre-head, and then it's, the ecstatic personality type. In large font, the font that we have right now is fine, but I think the issue is that pleasure principles is so small, it's getting lost.
Great.
All right, and then we can, on the outcome page, we can do the heavier lifting of, getting people to that ecstatic personality type concept. All right, so I'm going to just put a test email address. I'm going to click continue. Okay, great. Congratulations. You discovered your pleasure principle, conformist, but the label's only so satisfying. And then we've got an outcome page here, which explains what it is. We have the book. We have a pre-order the copy on Amazon. Now, what I'm going to say here, and we'll talk about this offline when you and I do a little bit of a deeper dive into your quiz. The single biggest thing that's going to move the needle here is to switch from a text-based page to a video page, where you have an actual video that reveals the person's results and then transitions into the call to action that we want them to take, which in this case here is to pre-order the book on Amazon. That is going to be the single biggest needle mover, and we can talk about kind of the format and structure of that video and what we want to include there. But that is big picture. Probably the tiny hinge that's going to swing the biggest door is making that transition. So we'll talk about that offline. But in the meantime, this is great. We got people their results. And our call to action here is to get folks to grab a copy of the book, which is awesome. Let's take a look at the stats, right? So this is inside the Bucket account. So this quiz, of course, built in Bucket. I'm going to hit back and go to the page. This quiz obviously built in Bucket. And let's take a look at the stats, right? So we look at the stats globally, sort of high level. We've had 3,000 people opt into this thing, which is awesome. We have an 83% completion rate, which is great, by the way. 66% opt-in rate. That's incredible when you think about it, right? So you think about cold traffic, 66%. That's a really good number. So I'm happy looking at that.
Just break that down for me, Ryan. When you what does participant opt-in rate mean? Is that from someone who clicked on the ad or then clicked on it and kept going and completed? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's for people who have reached the quiz. So people who have reached the quiz, 66% of those people have opted into the quiz. And we'll break it down in further detail here when we look at the individual steps. And this helps us kind of identify where people are falling off along the way. Landing page is good. So 72.5% of people who get to this landing page see the first question. That's good. That means that 72% of people will click on this button right here to initiate the quiz. That's a good number. Anything north of 50% on that number is good. Anything south of 50% means that we've got to do a little bit of surgery on that step. So the way I look at these things when we're doing a sort of diagnosis like we're doing right now is start top of funnel. Let's figure out what benchmarks we're hitting and which ones we're missing. And by the way, these are not benchmarks pulled out of thin air. Again, and you and I have talked about this, but for the benefit of folks listening to this right now, we have access to over 300 million data points from quizzes in virtually every market, every geography, every language that you can think of around the world. So we know globally what you should expect a quiz to convert at based on all the data that we have access to. So these aren't, just pulled out of thin air numbers. These are, you're doing better than 80 to 90% of quizzes when you're hitting certain thresholds. So we kind of know all those numbers. So 72.5%, you're solid there. I would not touch the landing page except for maybe that one little thing that we talked about. Pleasure principle.
Could we change color? Could we quote and put it in kind of one of our brand palette colors, like the kind of gold?
Yeah, you certainly could. I think I would test one element at a time on this. So I might test just the quotes to see if it gives you that nice 5 to 10% bump, because that's a good number, right? If we get this up from 72% to somewhere between, say, call it 75 to 80%, that would be great. That really takes us in a really positive direction. And then once we've optimized this as much as possible, then I would test a scream in terms of a totally different landing page color scheme or color palette or design. But I like to kind of get the control humming as much as possible, and then we go and move in a different direction. So let's take a look at these questions. So this is the question completion rate. So this is how each individual question is being answered. The minimum threshold I'm looking for on these is typically 95%. 95, 97% is kind of the benchmark. Anything less than that, it tells us that we've got potentially issues with those questions. So we look at this, and as we get deep into the quiz, question 5 and beyond, wouldn't touch it at all, right? So 98, 98, 98, 99, excellent. Don't even mess with it. The two that have the lowest conversion rate, this first one here, which is interesting. Had you heard of the concept of the hedonic treadmill before? 95% of people say no. That's a very interesting data point. And it may be consistent with what you already know. But from my standpoint, what that tells me as a marketer is that I need to do a fair amount of education around what is the hedonic treadmill. What does that mean? And that's a perfect thing to be talking about in your outcome page video, so post-quiz, the video. Before we get into your results, let's talk a little bit about what is the hedonic treadmill? What does that mean exactly? And why is it important for you? So let me explain. So you can get into that type of copy to really educate people, knowing that it's not a waste of time. 95% of your audience could benefit from education around that concept. Let's take this one right here. What's your substance of choice? Anything with enough kick, Ambien, wheatgrass. We're losing 5% of folks here. I'm wondering if there's a fourth option that we may want to consider. Something about, not taking any substances. I'm wondering if that's where we're losing people. If some people are saying, you know what, honestly, I don't do caffeine, I don't do alcohol. I'm not into, I don't drink coffee, so none of these really apply to me. Like if for someone like myself, I don't drink caffeine. I do a little bit of alcohol, but for almost 10 years of my life, I really abstained from alcohol. And if I were to take this quiz, I might get to this question, or someone like me, and say, honestly, this doesn't sound like it's right for me. And you might say, Jamie, well, that person isn't your client, and it's fine for those people to bail. But we may want to have a safety valve option, which is something along the lines of, honestly, none of the above.
And can you have more options than you have personality types at the end?
Oh, for sure.
Can you have?
Yeah, so for sure, like we can map, the technology, the way it works is we can map the answers to these questions to one of 3 buckets, and then that fourth one could map to nothing. So it might not factor into your algorithm that diagnoses what bucket someone lands in. So yeah, absolutely, we can do that. And then we've got this. Another thing
I also wonder if elixirs is just too specialized a term, right? Could you just do like green juices, something else that's more understandable to people?
Yeah, totally could be. But the coffee one is the thing that puts questions in my mind. just for the folks who, abstain from caffeine. Because I get what we're doing here. Like I get the kind of the 3 buckets, but there may be, it could be, that's just pure speculation and a hypothesis. I don't know that for a fact, but the fact that we've got 97.5% of people answering this question, and then we lose, 5% of our audience here, that might be one that I spend a little time, polishing a bit. I gave some feedback when I was going through the quiz before looking at these numbers. If that feedback relates to any of these questions with kind of north of 98% completion rate, just ignore it. I said some things about changing the phrasing and simplifying the answers. If it's for one of these questions down here, just ignore it. Don't mess with it. All right, let's take a look at the conversion stats. So this is based on your buckets. So this is really interesting, right? So we know how the market is breaking down. And for everyone watching this right now, I want you to think about how useful it would be to know how your market breaks down so that you can customize how you market and how you communicate with people based on their bucket, based on their type. So unsurprisingly here, we have, the hedonist and purist buckets are larger than our conformist bucket, which is pretty small. The thing that I would reflect on there is that by design, or is that perhaps, is that a positive thing? Or is there an opportunity for you to be changing the front end of your marketing to attract more conformist-oriented people? Because we oftentimes have biases where we tend to communicate in ways that are in alignment with our type. So if you were to take this quiz, I'm not sure where you might land, but typically I see this happen where the bucket that someone lands in tends to be the bucket in the way in which they communicate, and so it becomes this sort of virtuous cycle where you attract more and more and more of those people and fewer people who are dissimilar to yourself. So just something to think about and reflect on. You may say, this is perfect, this is exactly what I want, but something to think about. Lead capture rate, this is awesome. I like to get 50% on this number, so you're at somewhere between 74 and 83%, so that's great. This is also a good indicator of the segment of your market you're resonating most with. So the hedonist market, the fact that it has the highest lead segment, has the highest lead capture rate, that tells me that that's probably the segment of the market that we're doing the best job of resonating with. Of course, it can also be the fact that, if they're hedonist, they might just, be someone who takes quizzes because it's just their personality type, versus the conformist is a little bit more of a rule follower and less likely to do that. So there's of course, those biases can come into play as well. But this is really good. So bottom line, just to sum things up on stats, and then we'll kind of talk about a few final questions before we wrap here. Is overall, this is looking great on the quiz side of things. Overall, this is looking great on the quiz side of things. It's the numbers that I like to hit, so you're doing great there. Awesome job. Few minor points of optimization, but these are in that kind of whisper category. The single biggest thing that's going to move the needle on your quiz is actually post-quiz. When we take people through these questions, like we just did a moment ago, and we get to our lead capture page, make this little change right here, but this page is converting very well, so I wouldn't change it too much. The single biggest thing that's going to move the needle.
Specifically, Ryan, that was change the little thumbnail of the PDF so that the pleasure principle languaging is clearly visible and
exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. The big one, though, Jamie, is going to be this right here, and we'll talk about that offline because I've got some ideas for you that I think will move the needle in a big way. But that is the single biggest thing, and that represents yet another kind of one of our best practices that we've discovered just from all the data. Text versus video. Which is going to perform better? We have virtually, as conclusive data as I think you can find, that almost universally, I can't say 100% of the time, but almost universally, a video-based outcome page, don't want to do that, is going to outperform a text-based page with a few kind of notable exceptions. So that's what I would focus on, and hopefully that is helpful for folks watching this right now. Jamie, I've got just one or two final questions before we wrap things up on our interview here, and really that's this. So now that you've gone through this process, right? You're someone, you came into this process, you had experience building a quiz before, so it's not like you'd never done a quiz before, but you decided to use the technology. you decided to, and your team, you decided to get a little bit of help from our team and our expertise and go through the process that we follow. For anyone watching this right now who's thinking about doing a quiz, thinking about working with our team and using our training and technology in any way, shape, or form, but maybe they're on the fence right now, what would you say to someone in that situation?
Well, I mean, I think you've just modeled it perfectly, which is both a decade plus of your experience, plus data and benchmarks, plus the kind of tweaks and optimizations. Like nobody wants to think their baby's ugly, and all of our babies are kind of a little homely, right? And so the ability to run this through your methodology, and then also the bucket platform, which gives you the insights and the stats. We would have been flying blind on that. And at least when I fly blind, I feel far less willing to back it with dollars, because you're just not sure. It's the whole 50% of your marketing spend is bullshit and you don't know which half. But right. This actually removes that. And so the capacity for us to take art, blend it with science, and actually reach people with confidence because of the analytics is just the secret sauce. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you, or anything that you want to say before we wrap things up from the heart or otherwise to anyone watching this right now before we wrap this up?
Well, look, mate, I mean, I've shared this with you, personally offline before, but I will reiterate it for everybody. Like I said, my entire career has been in academics, research, training, expeditions. And so I have found this just bizarre thing where our world and the market of info marketers have intersected. And I have spent 5 years looking for people with integrity, with rigor, with chops. And Ryan has been the standout because of your lived experience, your professional career, and you're not coming to this as a flim-flam sales guy. You're coming to this with a quant, data, analytics, and great heart. And so that alone, I think, is as or more valuable than the products you've developed, but you have developed them from that place too. So there's a congruence there and an integrity and a rigor to what you do that I haven't found anyplace else in the digital space.
I appreciate that, man. And I appreciate you being so willing to share your quiz with the world like this. I think it's going to be really inspiring for folks who have not yet created a quiz to see what's possible in their business. I think we're probably going to have some folks that are going to want to take this quiz to find out what their type is, which is always a fun sort of byproduct of these conversations. But with that being said, I just want to say thanks so much again for sharing, for being here. And I'm really, really excited for what this quiz is going to do for your business and the opportunities that it presents. So Jamie Wheal, ladies and gentlemen, give this man a virtual round of applause and say thank you. And Jamie, you and I will be talking really soon.
Thanks, Ryan.